Hey everyone, this is Ryan Cassata, and today I'm joined by my friend Maya, and we are talking about estrogen, something that I have never talked about on my channel before, so stay tuned.
Hey Ryan, thank you for having me on your channel.
Question 1, what was the process for getting on estrogen?
So before I could start on hormone therapy, which in my case is estrogen because I'm male to female, I had to go to see a gender therapist. And the gender therapist basically checked me out to make sure that I was basically truly transgender and that I was ready to take hormones. She then wrote me a letter, which I took to an endocrinologist in Houston, who gave me a full physical workup. He gave me basically a breast exam, believe it or not. He gave me full blood workup, and he also gave me a sperm count test, which I have no idea why, but he did, and it was a little uncomfortable, but it was well worth it. I would have done anything at that point to get estrogen. At that point, I then took that prescription that he then gave me to a pharmacy, and a pharmacy gave me a kind of estrogen that had to be made at a compounding pharmacy. It was a special kind that I could only get in Houston. And then I started on hormones at that point.
Question 2, do you have to go on hormone blockers too?
With that first prescription for estrogen, I did not have to go on testosterone blockers. That's because the kind I was getting basically suppressed my testosterone naturally. It was kind of an old school way of doing things, but it worked really well for me at first. When I moved to Florida, they didn't have the kind of estrogen I needed here in the compounding pharmacy. So I ended up having to go to another doctor who wrote me a more traditional for today modern prescription, and that included a testosterone suppressor and then another kind of estrogen, which is what I'm currently on today.
Question 3, when did you start and how long have you been on it?
So the first day I went on estrogen was October 6, 2010, and I marked it in my calendar so I would remember it every year. And I still remember that day. I picked up my prescription, I went to lunch with my then wife, I took out my pill and a glass of water there at the restaurant, and I took my first pill. And I just remember that feeling was amazing. I felt a little loopy, I remember that first day, and I thought, well, maybe it's sort of like a psychological effect, except that a month later when my estrogen dosage was upped, I felt it again, and I wouldn't have expected to feel it then. So I think there was a real physical effect going on there. But yeah, October 6, 2010, which means it's been a little over 6 years.
Question 4, what are the first changes you noticed?
The first changes, let's see. The first changes I noticed were basically to my breasts. At the time, they were kind of small. I actually did have small breasts before I even started this whole thing, so that helped a lot. But I noticed a pain coming from basically the nipple region, and it was so bad that sometimes it actually would make me double over. I mean, it was really bad. I couldn't believe it would hurt that much and that nobody had told me this before. But yeah, that was basically the first change I noticed. Also, there was some emotional changes pretty quickly, and I don't know if those were psychological because I was finally free to be me and be authentic. But I did feel a little more, I don't know, emotional, a little more connected, a little more well-grounded. I felt right for the first time in my life.
Question 5, what changed later?
Changes that came later were things like my skin got really soft and I started losing hair on my body. It started to thin, like on my chest, etc. Like I never actually got electrolysis or anything on my chest. It just naturally went away slowly over time. And that took quite a long time. Even the breast growth, while there was like an initial spurt at first, it didn't really finish until a few years later. So at this point I've been on 6 years. So it's pretty much like the average length of a female puberty. So at this point, I don't expect to see any other further changes, but yeah, I would say the later changes were the skin getting really soft and the hair thinning. One thing I'd like to add, you don't lose hair on your face when you're a male to female trans person. It actually has to be removed with electrolysis or laser. Unfortunately, it doesn't just stop on its own, which is a big pain and a huge expense.
Question 6, what are your favorite changes?
My favorite change is probably the breast growth. I mean, for a very obvious reason, besides the fact that, well, let's face it, they feel good and other women like it if you're a lesbian. But it's such a significant secondary female sexual marker that once you have breasts, people just kind of automatically assume, yeah, that's a woman over there. So it made things a lot easier for me in women's only spaces like bathrooms and locker rooms and that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say definitely the breast growth was my favorite change.
7, what is one thing you want the world to know about estrogen treatment?
The one thing I'd like the world to know, well, let's see. I think for sure the one thing is that when you get on estrogen therapy, it's a huge step. It isn't done lightly. They don't just hand this stuff out willy-nilly to everybody. And it really is a significant change that you go through. It isn't just cosmetic. A lot of people just think, oh, well, you know, you get on estrogen and it'll like do all these changes to your body, like, you know, your skin, your breast, you know, that kind of thing, like I was saying. But it actually also changes your brain, you know, it changes a little bit of the way you think. I'm pretty sure I think a little bit differently than I did before I started estrogen. It does feminize your brain. And it is a profound and deeper than the skin kind of change. So I think that's the one thing I'd like people to know. Also, by the way, it doesn't change your voice. I think a lot of people assume that it changes my voice. I know it does for trans guys, and they're lucky for that, but for me, you know, I had to basically construct a female voice, and that could be sometimes the very most difficult thing to do for a trans woman. Anyway, bye Ryan, thank you for having me on your channel.
Thank you so much for watching, peace.